Hey everyone, welcome back. Here we are in our first match, our first game. Let's go ahead and see where we stand. I think this is a perfectly keepable hand. We've got the turn 2 Silkwrap if necessary, and really just a handful of removal. So I wish I knew what we were up against before deciding, but I think that with this hand we'll be able to deal with most any threat long enough to find our win conditions and just to stay alive in general, which is what the goal of our deck is. Assuming we can make it to the late game with our Starfield engine, it's very difficult to lose. And playing against a blue-white deck seems like we might be able to do just that. Could be a human deck, could be Bant Company, of course, the boogeyman of the format. I guess we'll see. I'm inclined to believe it's Bant, however. Possibly Evolving Wilds fetching up a forest here. I'm going to go ahead and find a swamp myself, since we've got Grasp of Darkness that we need to cast, and we already have the Prairie stream for our blue mana. See what our opponent fetches up here. And it is the forest, so that points towards Bant Company. Won't know just yet, but that is my suspicion. So we have like a Tireless Tracker or some 2-drop that he couldn't cast last turn. Ooh, a Selfless Spirit, okay. We have a choice now of either just playing the Lunar Force or the Evolving Wilds and using a Silkwrap to deal with this. Not really threatened by this either way. The downside of using Silkwrap this turn is that without the Lunar Force, our opponent could play an uncontested Collected Company on their main phase next turn. So with that in mind, I think I might just want to actually lay down the Lunar Force and then let them run whatever creature they want into it, and then the turn after that I can use a Silkwrap or hold up Anguished Unmaking or something to deal with the spirit. Probably a Silkwrap though. We'll see what our opponent manages to find here. Alright, so there's the Tireless Tracker that he was likely going to play, and then followed up with a land to immediately get the clue off. Alright, there's our second swamp also off of the Evolving Wilds. I guess we just go ahead and Silkwrap the spirit here and pass the turn. So still have yet to draw anything but removal and land, which seems like it would be decent against a Collected Company deck, just all about the creatures, but it does not bode well if we can't find a way to close out the game. Our opponent will be able to just kind of overwhelm us with card advantage here, especially with the Tireless Tracker. So I might be able to fire off a Silkwrap and hold up a Grasp of Darkness this turn. Gonna go ahead and fetch up the swamp to facilitate that. And there's a Stasis Snare, so still more removal, but let's go ahead and fire off the Silkwrap here. Want to get rid of this as soon as possible so that he can't find more lands to find more clues. Opponent's probably just going to end of turn, sacrifice the clue, find a card. And let's see what he's got on turn 6. So far we've dealt with just about everything 1 for 1, although with the Tireless Tracker he was able to replace it. It's a good thing we killed it before he played the Evolving Wilds though, since that translates into 2 clues. Once when you play the Evolving Wilds, and once again when you fetch something up with it. Here I guess we could always use more white mana, so let's go ahead and find a Plains, and pretty much anything except for land, and cards like Silkwrap would be welcome right now. Starfield would be great since we have the Lunar Force in the graveyard already. We'd be able to use that to great effect. But as it stands, don't have a whole lot of action going on. Probably going to have to use a Stasis Snare, or I'm going to go ahead and put an end stop here. Opponent found the Duskwatch Recruiter, so I do want to deal with that before he's able to untap and use his 1 forest to find a replacement for the recruiters. The question is, what do we do to get rid of it? The Grasp of Darkness is a little bit more efficient. However, the Stasis Snare can be used, if we hold on to it, then we can use it to deal with a much greater threat or something. I think I'm just going to go ahead and grasp it for now. Hold on to the Stasis Snare for, I'm not even sure what, but it is nice that pretty much all of our removal is -X/-X or exile or something, so that the Selfless Spirit can't be used to protect it. Opponent just fetched up another green source. So hopefully one of these days we'll find a Planeswalker or a Starfield. More Selfless Spirits, huh? I guess we gotta deal with one of them now, so I'll just go ahead and do the Stasis Snare, use our mana effectively. If I find like a Languish or a Planar Outburst, I might regret doing so, but I do like having a bunch of enchantments in play ready to go for when we have the inevitable Starfield come down. Still not finding much action though. Small problem. Opponent could have a Dromoka's Command at some point, make us sacrifice something. I'd probably give him back a Selfless Spirit. In all likelihood, but we still have a moderately healthy life total. 2 cards to our opponent's 2 cards now with the Duskwatch. Unfortunately, it's going to replace itself if I deal with it now. I could Ruinous Path that. He would just probably sacrifice the Selfless Spirit to it. So I suppose I might as well fire off an Anguished Unmaking and get him to use his mana now. See what we have in store for us. If he finds anything, if it's like a Spell Queller or something, I would like to know about it as soon as possible. Looks like he didn't find anything, so shuffled a bunch of lands and whatnot. Maybe Dromoka's Command to the bottom of his deck. Alright, so we have Ob Nixilis. Finally, we have a card draw engine. Question is he too late? So we could just play him and immediately minus to deal with the Selfless Spirit, but I think we just want to draw some cards right now. So I guess I might as well hold up some black mana for something. But let's go ahead and play him, and I think we're just going to tick him up. That might provoke our opponent to attacking him with the Selfless Spirit, which would serve to take some of the pressure off of us. And we can still, even if after taking a hit, use his minus ability, unless our opponent has a Dromoka's Command or something to buff his damage. So it's not. He's just going to keep attacking us. Alrighty. And still nothing but land. Not exactly what we want to see. There's at least Shambling Vent, which isn't that great since can't even use it just yet, and our opponent could always fight it with a Dromoka's Command. I think we have to actually deal with the Selfless Spirit right now, so what I think I want to do is Awaken. I believe even if he sacrifices it, it will still Awaken, but I guess we'll find out in a moment. I'm going to go ahead and put the counters onto the Shambling Vent. Opponent can sacrifice in response. We'll see if that makes the Ruinous Path just outright fizzle. Or if he just casts a Collected Company, most likely. Ooh, an Archangel Avacyn. Alrighty, so doesn't quite fizzle, but does not look good, since we're likely going to be going down to 1 hit here. Can't even use Ob Nixilis' plus anymore, so we'll have to use him on the offensive now. But if we do get to untap and actually gain some life off of the Shambling Vent, then we'll see. Might not be in the worst of shape here. Oh, he's just going to transform and kill us. That makes sense too. Alrighty, so we'll take 3 damage from that and be dead. So we flooded out a little bit there. Still had nothing but lands and a minor spell coming. But yeah. Let's see if we can do better. So I do like Deadweight. Kills off a lot of the earlier drops and is also useful at reducing power on something like an Avacyn or something if we can't quite find the outright kill spell like a Ruinous Path or an Oath of Liliana for her or something. I'm not sure if it's warranting a card slot. I definitely want to bring in Duresses and a Dispel and some Negates for the Collected Companies. Those are quite dangerous. Also the Dromoka's Command, of course. We could bring in Wasteland Stranglers, also Transgress the Mind for dealing with Coco. Hits Avacyn as well. I don't really think that we need the Linvalas. They are nice, and we're almost always guaranteed to have less creatures than our opponent, so Linvala would be a 6 mana, gain 5, and have 8 power worth of flyers on 2 bodies, which is definitely great. And she is big enough to go toe-to-toe with Avacyn herself, but it is a question of do we have enough space in our deck. So I think we can afford to cut the Oaths of Liliana. They're not the most effective when your opponent is flooding the board. A fine card, but for 3 mana we really need a bit more of an effect. Definitely want to keep all of our board wipes in. I think we can maybe afford to cut down on the Lunar Forces somewhat, and even the Anguished Unmakings. I like holding the Stasis Snares as an out to Avacyn. Anguished Unmaking, while more flavorful, is a little too painful, I think. So with that said, I don't really want to get too soft to like a turn 2 Duskwatch Recruiter. turn 3 Tireless Tracker or something if we don't have like a Languish in hand. So I don't really want to trim the Grasps or the Silkwrap. So I'm just going to cut one Oath of Jace, I think. Could also see Ruinous Path, but I really like Awakening later in the game and being able to find an out to Tamiyo, of course, since we're shaving the Anguished Unmakings, and also putting counters on a Shambling Vent to have a life-linking threat. So let's go ahead and run this back and hope for the best. Stay tuned for Game 2, everyone. Alrighty, welcome back, everyone. Here we are in Game 2. Let's go ahead and take the play. And not a very impressive hand whatsoever. We've got double Starfield, 2 planes, and a couple of uncastable spells. I think we have to mulligan that, unfortunately. And this hand, while far from great, is significantly better. We do have enough black mana to manage a Languish, so unless, of course, our opponent has like a Spell Queller ready to go, we'll be able to fire off a Languish and hopefully catch up. So I'm going to go ahead and keep that. And I think we already have, between the Silkwrap and the Languish, enough removal. I'm going to try and find something better than that. Find like an Oath of Jace, a Lunar Force would be fine. Just anything that will allow us to buy some time and sculpt our hand. It is worth noting the Lumbering Falls, 3/3 hexproof. We're going to have to find a more permanent solution to that once it starts going active. A pair of Shambling Vents might do the trick. Alright, opponent's got a Duskwatch, probably just going to scoop it up with the Silkwrap. Could also play Lunar Force, but I think it's better just to get that off the table and hopefully get our opponent to commit more to the board. They tap out on turn 3, then we can play a Lunar Force safely and go from there. Probably just another Duskwatch Recruiter or something to that effect. Maybe a Sylvan Advocate. Alright, there's the Advocate. Not very much pressure at all until we get to 6 lands, of course, the magic number, and then that's when things become problematic with the Lumbering Falls out, so we're going to have to find an answer to it before then. I could hold back the Shambling Vent, but I think we're just going to start with the Duress and likely play Lunar Force here. Alright, well there's the Collected Company, so next turn probably a Tireless Tracker followed by a Forest, and then we'll be able to clean them both up with a Languish. Or I could just play the Lunar Force now. He'll likely use the Reflector Mage to eat the Lunar Force, effectively. So I think I'm just going to take the Collected Company and pass, honestly. Next turn, Languish. Opponent will have a Spell Queller, a fairly useless Reflector Mage. I guess it's good at breaking Lunar Forces. And not a whole lot else going on, hopefully. Other than the Lumbering Fall, of course. Alright, Oath of Jace is pretty decent. I do want to get the Tireless Tracker off the table, however. I would love to play Oath of Jace, but I think necessity demands that we deal with the board first. Opponent could just pass, in which case I don't know if it would be worth him spell quellering an Oath of Jace, but certainly possible. Alright, well, Ob Nixilis is resilient to that, so I'm just going to go ahead and cast that. Even if he brings down the Spell Queller, that with the Lumbering Falls isn't enough to kill Ob Nixilis, so definitely just going to go ahead and cast him. Hopefully our opponent didn't find a Collected Company. Try and find another board wipe of some kind for when the Collected Company hits. Okay, so no Spell Queller even. He's going to wait and actually hit a spell with it, most likely. He's just looking for lands at this point. What are we looking for exactly? We do have the Planeswalker threat, but he's got the Lumbering Falls. He's just going to pass. Okay. Holding up the Spell Queller from the looks of it. Let's keep blessing, I guess. We could play Oath of Jace, and that's unfortunately all of our blue mana, so that means we wouldn't have a Lunar Force available. I'd like to be able to cast both spells at once. Although, I suppose I could play Oath of Jace, and then in response to the Spell Queller, Ruinous Path it. So maybe that would have been better. But yeah, here comes Collected Company. We can't really do a whole lot about it, except hold up a Shambling Vent. Opponent still isn't close to the 6 mana. I guess they're getting fairly close, but once they do have 6, then the Advocate makes the Lumbering Falls into a rather large threat. Currently it doesn't do a whole lot, since we've got the Shambling Vents that can hold them both back, however. It'd be perfectly okay if our opponent just attacks here. Alright, he looks like he's going after Ob Nixilis, so hopefully there is no... we need some white mana here. Hopefully we're not dealing with a Dramoka's Command. Suppose we shall see. Okay, he would have done it pre-combat if he had it, so it bodes well for us. Gain some life. Wasn't going to do anything else anyway. I think it's time we pull the trigger on some number of our spells. Even if we fall into a spell queller, we'll be able to deal with it. So I could also just threaten to use Ob Nixilis' ability too. So why don't we start with a Lunar Force to kind of keep things under control. He could play a spell queller, and we have our choice of Ruinous Pathing it or just minusing Ob Nixilis. I feel like he's gotta go for it now. Sure. Alright, so I've got the choice. I could just wipe his board almost too. Still stuck on 4 lands. Could use the Ruinous Path on the Spell Queller and then Ob Nixilis, the Sylvan Advocate. But I do kind of like just drawing cards. It's probably better just to deal with them now though. So I'm going to go ahead and deal with the Spell Queller. That's going to put a Lunar Force on the field. Go ahead and cast that for free. And if we do kill the Sylvan Advocate, our opponent can spend, if they find a land, their whole turn just dealing another 3. Ob Nixilis still survives. I do think that's okay with me. So I'm just going to go ahead and kill this for free now. And with the Lunar Force to kind of lock up the board, now we can take our time, and if our opponent wants to keep using his Lumbering Falls, we'll be free to deploy Starfield, an Oath of Jace, find some more action, all the while drawing cards off of Ob Nixilis. So I'd say we're in pretty decent shape this game. Opponent has a Reflector Mage to break the Lunar Force. That is fine. Now we can safely play Starfield unless our opponent has a Negate, which would be unfortunate, but if we get Starfield down, I'd say we're in pretty good shape here. Opponent have another Sylvan Advocate. Okay, Duskwatch. My opponent doesn't really have enough mana to use this guy to the best of his abilities, so I think we just want a plus for now. Opponent could... Actually, that changes things. So now we can actually play the Starfield and deal with that. So let's go ahead and do that. Starfield is safe to play, finish this guy off so that he can't kill Ob Nixilis. And now we've got a Starfield active with Lunar Force in the graveyard, bringing it back every turn. That's going to be very hard for our opponent to deal with. We also found our second blue source there, which is nice for casting multiple oaths in a turn or something. But it's still struggling to find his land. So we're in a pretty good spot. Play a Tireless Tracker or something. Just a Selfless Spirit. Sure. So let's always yield and bring back the Lunar Force. Alright, Grasp was great here, so I'm just going to play an Oath to start things off, I think. Don't want our opponent to transform this Nissa. Requires 7 lands, and he's at 6, so we're going to have to act now. Alright, so we're going to put an Oath into the graveyard, so we got some fodder for the Starfield. That's going to actually turn all of our enchantments online as well. And we can actually play the Transgress as well. So this will work out perfectly. We'll Transgress our opponent, see what they have cooking up over there. Hopefully hit a Coco or something. I'd settle for a Spell Queller, or Tamiyo. Alright, so our opponent just has Selfless Spirit, and when we're done with them, they're just going to have a Lumbering Falls, which isn't so great. I do want to deal with the Nissa, I suppose. Our opponent could use the Selfless Spirit to save it from Ob Nixilis using his minus ability, so we're just going to draw some cards and keep him alive. I guess I could play a land, but since we're going to have an Oath of Jace cycling in, we want to have some lands to discard in case we find all spells. Opponent just found a land. They're going to activate their Lumbering Falls, attack for 5, and play a Selfless Spirit. And let's see, yeah, they're going all after Ob Nixilis here. Fine by me. And they're not even going to play the Selfless Spirit, alright. So now if we find something like a Languish or anything really to deal with the Selfless Spirit, we'll be in pretty great shape. And because we have a Planeswalker, we even get to scry off of the Oath of Jace there. Pretty sweet. Alright, we're going to keep the enchantment that is not Summoning Sick in case we find another to play. And unfortunately we didn't, but I suppose we can get rid of some of these Evolving Wilds. I could play them to thin my deck of lands, but we already, I think, shuffled 1 to the bottom. It's largely irrelevant at this point, but let's just go ahead and draw a card here. Planar Outburst does not do a whole lot, except put some counters, I guess. +1/+1 counters onto the Shambling Vents. We could play a Lunar Force here and just start swinging away. I suppose I might as well. And 1, 2, 3. We can't quite play or activate the Shambling Vent and still hold up a Negate. Not that it really matters, I think, with the double Lunar Force. Our opponent has just a Selfless Spirit in hand that they could use to eat the Lunar Forces, and then play like a top-decked, I guess, Tamiyo or a Collected Company would be obnoxious. So I'm not in any rush here. I'm just going to go ahead and attack. We can use Lunar Force to trade with the Lumbering Falls if he doesn't cast anything. So unfortunately, the double Lunar Force doesn't really do a whole lot, since by casting one spell, as you can see, they're both triggered. I can't pick and choose. So casting a single spell does break both of them, but I'll be able to bring them back all the same. I think I'll always have a Lunar Force out now with the Starfield rather than going for Oath of Jace. We've got the tools we need to win. Opponent could kill Ob Nixilis here. Looks like he will. Can't do a whole lot about it. Let's see what more we can find. Collect Company. Alright, so that was the reason we left back the Negate, I suppose, was to deal with that in the event he top-decked one. I think one of the ways we lose this game is if he found like double Sylvan Advocate or something insane. I could use Planar Outburst, but then the Selfless Spirit protects them, so that is no bueno. Alright, let's just go ahead and get Lunar Force, I suppose, and try and win with Shambling Vents attacking. Or just another Starfield, I guess that'll work too. Is that lethal? Lethal? I guess we'll see in a second. Haven't actually done the math. It is not. We'll hit him for 10. I guess I could have played the Swamp and activated a Shambling Vent, but it is irrelevant as our opponent has conceded. So that was nifty finding the Starfield there. Being able to bring back an Oath of Jace and a Lunar Force every turn seems pretty unbeatable. So opponent's definitely playing Tamiyos and all other manner of creatures that are obnoxious to deal with. So I do like leaving in the Ruinous Paths for Tamiyo. The Lumbering Falls could actually be somewhat of a problem unless we have cards like Wasteland Strangler and Linvalas to block with. So I'm wondering if we need to bring those in now. On the draw, we still definitely want to have like Silkwrap so we can have some early interaction. Opponent does have Spell Quellers, so maybe cards like Ruinous Path are a lot less effective, and we just want to hope and pray it doesn't have a Tamiyo exactly to draw a bunch of cards off of. I definitely like the Grasp of Darkness for still hitting cards like Avacyn. What do we not need here? Planar Outburst, while nice, is a little questionable, I suppose, with Selfless Spirits out there to protect against. So we can definitely cut one of those, and question is, what do we bring in? I think Wasteland Strangler or Linvala. Summary Dismissal is nice, but it's a little expensive for what's likely just going to be a Negate most of the time, countering a Tamiyo or a Collected Company. It's not a whole lot of creatures that I really care to counter. Linvala is a nice way to play catch-up, but Wasteland Strangler is a lot less expensive and can be used to pressure Tamiyo or Nissa even once you transform, so we can deal with the token or something. So I think I'll just bring in a Wasteland Strangler. And yeah, let's leave it at that. Let's hope to run it back and win Game 3. Stay tuned. Hey everyone, here we are in Game 3 of our first match with a pretty keepable hand. We've got only the one basic, unfortunately, so the 2 Sunken Hollows are going to come in untapped, but between the 4 lands that we have access to all of our colors, cast any spell just about, and we can even play like a turn 2 Silkwrap if need be. So I'll go ahead and start things off with a Shambling Vent. I think we're more likely to want the double white on turn 3 than the 1 blue. Could have played a Sunken Hollow that turn. Alright, Lambholt Pacifist I'm really not too concerned with, unless it transforms, which it looks like it will, if I do nothing. So I think I have to Silkwrap that, unfortunately. And then, where does that leave us, though? Is it better to just play the Sunken Hollow, and then turn 3 we could play another Sunken Hollow and play Silkwrap, and then turn 4 Languish? It's unfortunate. Opponent will get to attack for 4, whereas they likely would not be able to otherwise. Problem is that on turns 3 and 4 we're going to be all mostly tapped out of what we want to do. Can't cast a Stasis Snare or Oath on turn 3, can't cast Languish on turn 4. Unless we find an untapped land, of course. I'm going to go ahead and just Silkwrap this guy. I think we want to preserve our life total as much as possible. And if we find an island or something, would be very nice, but also accept a swamp, I suppose. Alright, Prairie Streams. Another 2-drop. Can't be too devastating. See if he's got a Selfless Spirit. No, he can't even cast Selfless Spirit. Okay, so Sylvan Advocate, or Lambholt, or the other guy, the Duskwatch Recruiter. But yeah, it looks like we're just going to be taking 2 damage next turn. And if we can find an untapped land, we'll have a Languish. Otherwise, we'll just Oath or hold up Stasis Snare, I guess. If he passes with all of his mana open, can't really do much to avoid the Coco, except Languish the following turn. Go ahead and take our 2. Opponent doesn't have a 4th land, so that's kind of sounding like a Spell Queller there. So question is, what do we want him to hit? I think we just pass, let him use his mana, or let it go to waste, and then we'll just Stasis Snare on his turn or something. If he wants to tap out for it, I'll happily Languish. Or I could just Stasis Snare the Spell Queller and get back Stasis Snare. Okay, he's just going to put a counter on it and make me lose my Silkwrap. That's a little obnoxious, so I definitely want to deal with the Advocate now, I guess. Although I could just take the 3 and then try and do it end of turn. No, let's go ahead and just do this. If he wants to pass his turn to transform the Lambholt, that's fine. I suppose I could also just sacrifice the Stasis Snare now. Do we want to give him back a 2-3 or a 3-3 that likely can't do anything unless he passes the turn? Let's give him his 2-3 back. So we just kind of counter-spelled his Dromoka's Command. I think if I had given him back his Lambholt, then he would just pass the turn with Spell Queller up or something, get it to transform, and that'll be a little harder to deal with. Although finding a Duress is quite nice. So he's got 5 spells in hand, not playing any lands. So I could Duress, he plays Spell Queller, and then I Stasis Snare the Spell Queller, which would give me access to Stasis Snaring the Spell Queller, and then Duressing him. I'm trying to think if it's better to just play a land and pass and have up another Stasis Snare. I think so. This way I can always just use the Shambling Vent to block the Advocate, and I can next turn use Duress, and then if he does Spell Queller it, then I have my Languish plus Duress. Because he's got to have like a Collected Company in hand or something. He's just passing his turn, not doing much. I'll go ahead and, if I animate this Vent, then Dromoka's Command would be quite nasty, so I think I'm just going to wait and fire off the Duress this turn, most likely. Or just another Lambholt, sure. Okay, could play Ob Nixilis and blow up the Advocate. I kind of like that, actually. Let's go ahead and do that. Opponent can't attack us with the Lambholt unless he has the Dromoka's Command, in which case he's killing our Ob Nixilis, which would be unfortunate, but I think we'll manage. He's already used 1 command. Using a second wouldn't be the worst, because then he wouldn't be able to counter the Languish unless he had a Negate, and we'll have Duress beforehand rather. So he's going to transform, can't do anything about it, except snare it, I guess. Let's go ahead and draw a card first, and then I think we're going to Duress. If he wants to, in response, Collected Company, then we've got the Languish. And if he's got like a Dromoka's Command, he does it now. Which might be a little scary, but we'll be able to cast 2 spells in the turn anyway, so we could transform the Butcher back if need be. If it was too big to kill with Languish. So he's going to Collected Company and maybe find like a Spell Queller, that'd be fine. Reflector Mage wouldn't do anything. Anything else could just get swept away by Languish. Alright, Spell Queller. That's pretty cool, but I am more than happy to wipe the board now and still get my Duress. Let's go ahead and fire that off. Languish is just so good against the Collected Company deck. Part of the reason to play black. Let's go ahead and Duress our opponent and hit a Clash of Wills. That's nice to know. He'll play probably Advocate plus Selfless Spirit next turn, in which case we can just Languish again. So with an active Planeswalker and with our lands flowing, don't really have anything off the Starfield except a Stasis Snare, which isn't that great exactly, but we'll see what we can do. If he just plays 2 creatures, I'll happily Languish them both. Sure. Ob Nixilis will now be out of reach of Lumbering Falls as well. Seems like our opponent just gets stuck on lands, though. Yeah, let's go ahead and draw a card. Silkwrap. So we could Silkwrap and Snare, but that doesn't really make much sense. I think I'd rather hold on to the Stasis Snare to use in a combat-heavy turn or something. And do we need to cast anything else? I guess I could cast Oath of Jace first. Might as well do that. Okay, so we'll discard another Starfield, I suppose, and maybe a Shambling Vent. Gotta play the Plains this turn so that we can Languish. It's using our mana most effectively. Next turn I'll have 5 mana going to the Starfield, and I can still hold up a Stasis Snare if I find an untapped land. Otherwise, I can just Silkwrap this Selfless Spirit. Continuing to tick up on Ob Nixilis now that we're scrying, even more so. Alright, Lunar Force. I could do the trick. Our opponent has 1 card in hand. I don't believe I know what it is. He played a land last turn, so I probably should. Reflector Mage, that would be it. Okay. So our opponent has a Reflector Mage and an active Lumbering Falls. So I don't really need the Lunar Force. He's just going to break it with the Lumbering Falls anyway. So. We got enough to Silkwrap this and play Vent and Starfield. Might as well tick up first. Ooh, we have a Sorin now too. Okay. I don't mind that. Let's just go ahead and get this guy out of the way. And next turn we'll actually have an active Starfield as well, which we can start attacking with both of them. Because the Starfield will bring back a Starfield, and our opponent will be in big trouble. All he can really do is attack or leave up the Lumbering Falls to block with. That won't do a whole lot once I have Starfields active. Okay, just activate Lumbering Falls and attacking Ob Nixilis most likely. Could go after us, I guess. We are at a rather low life total, but opponent doesn't know about the Sorin that we can use to gain some life if need be. Something worth noting is that Sorin can actually target himself. I was playing a test match earlier that I really wish I had recorded. I had to use my Sorin, 2 of them actually, to -5 and target himself. My opponent was killing me with 2 Hissing Quagmires, I believe that's the name, the 2/2 Death Touchers, green-black manland from Battle for Zendikar. And yeah, he goes after Ob Nixilis, by the way. So we'll go ahead and bring back the Starfield, get back to our battling here. Don't need the Starfield. But I used Sorin on himself to gain enough life to find my 5th and 6th land, or 7th and 8th land drops, so I could cast multiple spells in a turn, and eventually go on to win the game after being stuck on, I think, 4 lands for almost the longest time, with multiple Lunar Forces and Starfields to gum up the board. In any case, let's go ahead and draw a card off Ob Nixilis before we get started here. Yield to that. Alright, so we have a Transgress, which we could fire off. We could also hold up Grasp of Darkness and Stasis Snare that way. So we're going to go ahead and attack our opponent. We want to kill them as quickly as possible. Give them as little chance to dig out of this as possible. I'm not going to use the Shambling Vents, however. Go ahead and see what we got working with over there. Alright, Reflector and a Nissa that's likely going, could play it, and then find his 6th land, so it wouldn't even transform. Whereas the Reflector Mage is actually kind of nasty because it can bounce our enchantments back now, which would be a problem. So let's go ahead and get rid of him. And with our 6 remaining mana, we could play Sorin and plus him. Could also play Oath of Jace and look for a Lunar Force while still holding up Stasis Snare. So I think I want to do that. Find a Lunar Force, that's likely just game over. Don't know how likely that is, though. We actually get to give our Oath of Jace Vigilance, effectively. Killing the tapped one, replacing it with an untapped one. And yeah, I'm just going to hold on to some removal spells now, I think. Opponent is in a bit of a bind here. Collected Company into like double Reflector Mage is an out, I suppose, but opponent didn't have it. So that is match 1 in the books. Let's move on to the next one. Stay tuned, everybody.